So if we talk about the framework, it's obviously a major framework for engagement covering politics and the economy, but it also asks China to make some fairly radical reforms in terms of human rights. Can you just outline some of the more important measures?
Well, tomorrow's Chinese New Year, and where better to go than Manchester's Chinese community to launch a new drive to bring not just the governments of China and Britain closer together, but the people of China and Britain closer together. A strong focus on the economy, on education, on climate change, on trade. But we also don't duck issues in respect of human rights. We have significant differences with China about the way we approach human rights issues. And I think it's important to be clear in public and in private, as we are with the Chinese government, about the concerns we have about human rights issues, and to try to understand their position but explain our position. And the document doesn't duck that.
It's not. I mean, to what extent is the Chinese government signed up to these things? Because you're calling on it to provide some form of meaningful autonomy for Tibet, to reduce the use of the death penalty, and also media freedoms. Now, a lot of people think China's gone the other way, if anything, in the last few months. We have the Charter 8 movement, for example. Is the government of China signed up to this in any way? Or is
this is a document of the British government, and it's our strategic framework for how the British government should approach working with China. I think there's big opportunities there. We've got the Chinese Prime Minister and Foreign Minister and other senior Chinese visitors coming to the UK in the next couple of months. And they'll be back again for the G20, the Group of 20 summit that the Prime Minister will be hosting on the 2nd of April. So this is a British government document about the issues that we think are important for Britain's relationship with China. So it's not a matter of the Chinese government signing up.
But were the government of China not to sign up to this, we would have to continue to engage with China simply because it's such an important world power.
We think engagement is the right thing to do. I mean, if you think back towards, on the issue of media freedom, one significant thing is that they opened up the country to journalists before the Olympics, and then the new rules that had been brought in for the Olympics were extended beyond the Olympics. That's obviously a good thing. That's not to say that there aren't then remaining issues about media freedom, etc.
Because obviously we know they've, for example, search engines, I think Google was partly limited in China and remains so, I think.
Well, yes, and there are arguments about whether or not Barack Obama's speech yesterday was transmitted in full. But I think that that enhances the case for engagement. And I think that one of the themes of my visit to Manchester is that the old divisions between foreign policy and domestic policy are collapsing. In the old days, the Foreign Secretary only spent his time talking to foreigners. But the truth is, on issues like economy, or crime and terrorism, or climate change, foreign policy and domestic policy actually merge into each other. And what we do abroad affects what we do at home. But equally, Britain's diverse population is a big asset for our foreign policy. Never mind the fact that they're very interested in our foreign policy.
I mean, in somewhere like Manchester, for example, we've always prided ourselves on good community relations, but a lot of people would say issues like Iraq and Gaza have created tensions. Would you accept that? And as far as Iraq is concerned, is that partly the government's fault?
Well, I think in respect of Iraq, people know that this issue divided parties and it divided the country. And I think the important thing that I always say is that I respect the different positions people have taken about the last 5 years in Iraq, the 5 years since 2003. But what counts for me as Foreign Secretary is the next 5 years. And it's the security improvement that will allow the withdrawal of British troops. It is the economic improvement, and it's also the political reconciliation. Because remember, it wasn't just Iraqis fighting against coalition forces. It was internal Iraqi strife that we were trying to help contain. And now you have a stronger Iraqi government, stronger Iraqi security forces. And so I do respect the different positions that people have taken about the wisdom or otherwise of the decisions that were taken. But I think that the beauty of our political system is that people should be able to express extremely strong views, but within the boundaries of the political system.
Nonetheless, a lot of people would say if the government was prepared to say, look, maybe it wasn't the wisest thing in the world, that would count, because it would show that the government was, would accept it could make mistakes, it would have done things differently if it had known.
Well, we've certainly said that it was proved to be much easier to win the war than make the peace, and there's no question that mistakes were made, but in the end historians are going to have to judge the wisdom or otherwise of what was done. What I say is I'm focused on the next 5 years, learning the lessons, but focused on making sure that we do try to make our contribution to Iraq becoming an anchor of stability, never mind democracy as well, actually, because it's a democratic country now, in the Middle East. And I think that is the right thing to do.
You mentioned Barack Obama. We had the extraordinary sight and sound yesterday of not only of him coming in, but we also had George Bush going, and I think he was being booed at times, and I think even The Economist has said he was possibly the most divisive and leaves as possibly the most unpopular president in history. I mean, a lot of people would say, has been tarnished by the Iraq issue as well. Is there not a risk that will also happen to this government?
Well, I think that we have a very close relationship with the US, but we're different countries. I mean, they're a presidential system, we're a parliamentary system. They are a very decentralised system with all their state politics. I'd like us to be more decentralised, but we are essentially a unitary state. I think that it's very, very important that Britain works closely with the US, because we know that if you want to do good in the world, whether on international poverty or climate change or terrorism, or peace in the Middle East, you need the United States on side. And I think what the Obama administration has shown, what the Barack Obama speech has shown, is that he wants to engage in a spirit, I think he said humility, but also determination. And those are good words, and they're words that recognise that America is the biggest country in the world, but it needs allies. I think we should be proud to be an ally.
Do you agree with the assessment of a lot of people that America has given itself a lot of work to do? To be seen again by the world as something which stands up for certain values, that it has got a tarnished image now?
Well, I think that the image of America today in newspapers all over the world is of a black man taking the oath of office 60 years after his father would have been not served in a Washington restaurant. And so that is a very, very striking rehearsal of the restorative powers of American democracy. And it's the people of America who voted for change, and they've done so decisively, and now Barack Obama has the power to put it into practice.
But I mean, you obviously have close relations with various foreign ministers and foreign secretaries around the world. It is true, is it not, that America does have a tarnished image at the moment?
Well, I think that, I honestly believe that the image of America today is of the image of Barack Obama taking the oath of office, 2 million Americans in front of him, all races, all religions, all colours, all parts of the world. And that is the great strength of America in the end is not one policy or another policy pursued by one president or another president. It's about what it represents as a country of dynamism and drive and hope, actually. So I think people are looking at America today and saying, well, let's see the sort of leadership that Barack Obama has promised.
Do you think, from what you know of him so far, do you think he has the potential to be one of America's greatest presidents?
I think that on his first day, you've got to say, of course he has the potential to be one of America's greatest presidents. He's got a unique story. I mean, there have only been 43 others, and he's got a unique history among those 44. And his calm, his sense of strategic vision, his willingness to listen, I think are all very significant qualities.
But there are also qualities that some people would say would set him apart. And I can tell you don't want to talk too much about the previous administration, but the reason people think those qualities, willingness to listen, openness, are important is because of the situation America's got itself into. How do you think history will judge George W. Bush?
Well, I think the great thing about history is that you can't write it in advance. And there'll clearly be a reckoning, but it will be a historical reckoning. And one day after he's left office is not the best time to have a strong sense of perspective. And it's clear that the American people were ready for a change, but their system meant they were going to get a change, because 8 years is it, and it's over. And it's time for someone else to have a go. And I think today is a day for looking forward rather than back.
And if finally I can just touch on Gaza briefly. A lot of people would say we're now further from peace than we've been for a very long time. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I think that we are at a very dark and dangerous moment. I think that the scale of the death and destruction in the last 3 weeks has been a terrible testimony to the failure of political processes to deliver the Palestinian state and secure Israel that are the only foundation of stability in the Middle East. it's our determination to address the humanitarian situation, which is desperate, and also the political situation, which really needs European and American and Arab engagement.
Because it seems everybody sort of knows the general shape the end game will have, and yet, as you say, we seem so far away from that. I mean, is that a failure of will on behalf of the international community or a failure of ability?
I think it's a failure of politics, it's a failure of process. Because you're right that most policy problems, you've got a good process but don't know what the outcome is. Here, we more or less know what the outcome is, but we haven't got a good process. And my belief is that we need what I would call a comprehensive process. In other words, all the issues of the Middle East and all the players in the Middle East, all 22 Arab states and Israel, ready to engage and compromise on the key issues. And that's why I talk about the need to build a stable Middle East on the basis of a 23-state solution, not just Israel and a Palestinian state, 2 states, but 22 states of the Arab League and Israel. And that comprehensive peace is the only basis, in my judgment, for the sort of stability that we need, but more importantly, that Israelis and Palestinians need.
And just finally, would it be fair to say that will take, as a minimum now, a number of years? I mean, it's not on the immediate horizon, is it?
Well, I think that the unusual thing about this problem is precisely that most of the solution is clear. And so I think that predictions about how long it will take are probably not wise, but what I know is it has to start now, because this is the running sore that does cause deep ructions right around the world. It speaks to very basic issues of security and justice, which I think can only be met for Palestinians and for Israelis in the 2-state solution that I strongly believe in, or in the Palestinian state living alongside a secure Israel that I strongly believe in.